May 10th. Happy birthday, Mr. Davis. Let's see. The state tests are done, so hopefully we can somewhat go back to sanity a little bit. My shirt from Princess Bride, not for you guys, and my birthday is a week from tomorrow. Feel the same way. So you have book. Sorry, pick up. There we go. Post-it note, make sure it goes inside a book, not outside a book. I see you, Bricky. And again, I'll be hopefully offering this to you guys next week. Brickington.
Okay. What did you say?
Brickington.
Okay. Anyway, I was just gonna say, me personally, I think that testing should be like split farther because like that's like too much. And
Period.
It makes like everyone's so hyper, and then you guys get mad and everyone gets in trouble a lot more.
Chap.
I don't disagree with you, but they don't ask us. And there's only a certain window that we can get it done in, so.
She chose
So.
to.
I feel the same way, trust me. Yeah, I love testing too.
You don't have to do testing.
Yeah.
You don't have to see it.
Yesterday's conversation.
What?
We're good to go from there. We already
Do
talked.
I want feet pics?
Those of you, again, who are not interested in reading, I do have a Twttin page which has all the audiobook files to hopefully make your life a little bit easier. We do have 2 grades left. We have a quiz this week, and then we have a final test next week. I will put your new, not your new, your old semester exam, which it was final, not semester exam, yes, which is the speech up on there. Sorry. Well, I wasn't trying not to be. Sorry, there was a squirrel in the room. I got it. Let's see if it's there. You know how those squirrels are. And let's see. We'll get a chance to actually start reading here in just a moment. I'm not turning around. Are you squirrel?
No, sir.
Okay, good squirrel. And we'll get a chance to actually start. Book is going to begin with a reference to what they call a plainclothes cop, which is the same thing as an undercover cop. So I did my best to try and find pictures of an undercover cop. I believe that one is a Halloween costume that I found online.
That wig is ugly.
That's one of the cops who arrested me when I was younger. And then...
See, detailed like.
Shh, can't talk. You just have to sit over there and think about acorns.
Acorns.
Don't worry, Chipmunk. There's another seat.
Just talk to me.
All right, now we get a chance to read to you.
Yeah.
Oh, we get to skip the first 8 pages
Why?
because it starts on page 9. If you go to chapter 1, it starts on page 9. So there you go. Oh, as we get into it, your guys' cover doesn't, I mean, it's the same as mine. It's just mine's in color and yours is in shiny. But there's a big dude in the middle. That's the new main character, a guy by the name of Brian. Not that Brian, different Brian. Bryon. And then the guy next to him who looks sort of like a young Matt Damon, that is Mark, who is his best friend. And they're going to give you descriptions and stuff as that as
Who's
we
the
get
guy
into it.
next to others?
That girl is going to be coming in later. Trust me, every year people seem to think that she's a guy, but she's not.
Wait, who?
Is she trans?
Oh, that's a girl.
You can't be talking.
It's okay. You know how those squirrels are.
Can't turn around.
But now we get to give the squirrel a little piece of paper to help him out.
Oh my god.
Yep, Squirrel Gods. Chapter 1. Mark and me went down to the bar/pool hall about 2 or 3 blocks from where we lived with the sole intention of making some money. We'd done that before. I mean, I was a really good pool player, especially for being just 16 years old, and what's more, I looked like a baby-faced kid who wouldn't know one ball from another. This, and the way Mark set me up, helped me hustle a lot of pool games. The bad deal is, it's against the law to be in this pool hall if you're underage because of the adjoining bar. The good deal is, the bartender and owner was a good friend of mine, being the older brother of this chick I used to like. When this chick and me broke up, I still stayed friends with her brother, which is unusual in cases like that. Charlie, the bartender, he was only 22, but he had a tough reputation and kept order real good. We lived in kind of a rough part of town, and some pretty wild things went on in Charlie's bar. I looked around for a plainclothes cop undercover because how old is the main character? Yeah, and he's in a bar. So he's a little underage, looking to see if he's going to get arrested. Told you he'd make some poor choices. Not like the squirrels in this room. I looked around for a plainclothes cop when we went in. I can always tell a cop, but didn't find one. So I went up to the bar and hopped on a bar stool. "Give me a beer," I said. Charlie, who was cleaning glasses like every bartender you ever see, just gave me a dirty look instead. "Okay, a Coke." "Your credit ain't so hot, Brian. You got cash?" "A dime! Ah, for crying out loud, can't you just let me charge a dime Coke?" Cokes are 15 cents now, and you already got $3 worth of Cokes charged here, and if you don't pay up this month, I'm going to have to beat it out of you. He said it real friendly like, but he meant it. We were friends, but Charlie was a businessman too. "I'll pay up, don't worry." Charlie gave me a lopsided grin. "I ain't worried, kid. You're the one who should be worried." I was, to tell the truth. Charlie's a big, tough guy, so a $3 beating up was something to worry about. Quick pause since we just finished NWEA math. The whole, as you mentioned, 10 cents for a Coke is cheap because when it took place, this whole inflation and price change thing. So they say now it costs 15 cents, but just to make math easier, we'll go with the 10-cent ones he was buying. So he owes $3. How many Cokes did he buy if they were 10 cents a piece?
300.
30.
Good job. 30. And so nowadays, if you were to go out to a restaurant and buy like a soft drink, I say $2. If you go to like a normal restaurant type thing, it might be up to $3. But if you go to some place like Taco Bell, it might be a little under $2. So I figured average it out to $2, it might be a little bit higher. So if you bought 30 Cokes and they were $2 a piece, that would be
$60.
there you go. So technically he owes $60, not $3. I mean, 60 today dollars. So he's going to get beat up for $60, not beat up for $3. I mean, getting beat up is never good, but at least owing $60 makes more sense. And it could be up to like closer to 90, depending on if you said Cokes cost $3. It depends on how you convert things. Yeah.
Was it like hard to get $3 or something?
I mean, was it hard to get for a kid to get $60 today?
No.
Yeah.
So we got the same thing.
If you
So a kid getting $60 today would be like a kid getting $3 back then.
So it's fun.
Because we're going to find out coming up that there's a kid who babysits and he gets like 25 cents every time he babysits. Right, but then again, realize that was probably close to like $10 or something like that, depending on how you look at it. So it's not awful. Anyway,
For me, it's awful.
there you go. "Hey, Mark," Charlie called. "There ain't nobody here to hustle." Mark, this is the friend on the other side, who had been scouting out the two guys playing pool, came up and sat down next to me. "Yeah, that's the truth. It's just as well. You guys are going to get in real bad trouble one of these days. Some guy's going to get hacked off when he finds out what you're doing, and you're going to get a pool stick rammed down your throat." "No, we ain't," Mark said. "Hey, give me a Coke, Charlie." "We don't have any credit." Mark stared at Charlie disbelievingly. "You gotta be kidding. Man, when did we ever not pay our bill?" "Last month." "Hey, you said you'd add it on to this month. That's what you said. So I don't see why you can't add 20 cents to that." 30 cents, corrected Charlie. "And like I just told Brian, if I don't get that money pretty soon, I'm going to take it out of a couple of highs." "All right. I'll give you the money tomorrow if you give us the Cokes right now." "Okay." Charlie gave in to Mark. Almost everybody does. It's a gift he had. A gift for just getting away with things. He could talk anyone into anything. "But if I don't get the money by tomorrow, I'll come looking for you." I got chilled. I mean, I heard Charlie say that to another guy once. I also saw the guy after Charlie found him. But if Mark said he'd have $3 by tomorrow, somehow he'd have it. "Hey, speaking of looking for you," Charlie continued, "the True Flower Child was in here asking for you." "Eminem? What did he want?" "How would I know? Man, that is a weird kid. Nice guy, but weird." "Yeah," Mark said. "I guess it would be hard to be a hippie in a hood's part of town." "Speak for yourself, man. This part of town don't make nobody a hood." You're right, but I really sounded profound there for a minute, huh?" Profound is just a fancy word that means big thinker, like you're super duper smart. If you don't know what hippies are, they play a big role in the book.
Aren't they the long-haired dudes?
They are the long-haired dudes with the flowers and the happiness and peace and stuff like that.
Mrs. Fresh's room.
Is it
Don't they
Mrs. Fresh is a
surf like a
hippie?
lot?
No, this is Mrs. Fresh's room. She's like a hippie.
Oh, yeah, I could roll with that. She
Don't
does.
they surf?
Yeah, they had an episode of South Park that was about hippies. There's like a little. This is actually going to come up in a moment. They're going to have someone driving like a little hippie van, a little tie-dye and things like that.
They scared and stuff.
They do.
But they
They
do
were.
LSD a lot.
They were
Oh,
very
I did a research project.
pro on doing that. Like you were trying. I did LSD. I was like, what did you know? But research project makes more sense. I was a little worried when you were just yelling across the room on camera, but now it makes it a bit better.
I said research project.
I got you now. I was just a little worried. Charlie just gave him a funny look and got us the Cokes. It was later in the evening now. Some more customers came in, so Charlie quit talking to us and got pretty busy. Where are you going to get $3? He finished off his coat. I don't know. That bugged the heck out of me. Mark was always pulling stunts like that. I mean, I ought to know. Mark had lived at my house ever since I was 10 and he was 9, and his parents shot each other in a drunken argument, and my old lady felt sorry for him and took him home to live with us. My mother wanted 100 kids and could have only one, so until she got hold of Mark, she had to be content feeding every stray cat that came along. There was no telling how many kids she might have picked up along the line. She could have afforded more than 2, me and Mark. I'd been friends with Mark long before he came to live with us. He lived down the street, and it seemed to me that we'd always been together. We'd never had a fight. We'd never even had an argument. In looks, we were complete opposites. I'm a big guy, dark hair, eyes, kind of looked like a St. Bernard puppy, which I don't mind, as most chicks cannot resist a St. Bernard puppy. Mark was small and compact, with strange golden eyes and hair to match, and a grin like a friendly lion. He was much stronger than he looked. He could tie me in arm wrestling. He was my best friend. We were like brothers. If you don't know what a St. Bernard looks like, it's a big puppy dog looking thing like that. So the main character who's telling the story, this is sort of, he says he looks like a St. Bernard, and he's a big guy with like dark hair and has like soft features and looks all friendly and chicks dig him. His best friend looks kind of like a lion. He's blonde and he's got like golden eyes. He's shorter, looks a bit more fierce and scary looking overall. So that's like how he compares the two of them. Yeah.
Are there any gay people in this book?
No, gay people did not exist yet. But no. Not really. I'm trying to think of how the story goes through there, but
I
no.
thought Dally was gay. He was zesty. That's crazy.
He might have been zesty. Hey, let's go look for Eminem, Mark said abruptly, and we left. Actually, I would say if this book was written more in modern times, I would guess Eminem probably was. So as we get farther into it and you find out more about
He's
Eminem,
zesty?
I would imagine there's a good chance that all the characters, he's probably along those lines. Uh-huh.
Like the
Nope, different artist. Just like the one that doesn't have a phone on his desk.
Yeah, I know, right?
Mark said abruptly, and we left. It was dark outside and seemed a little chilly. That's probably because school had just started. It always seems like fall when school starts, even if it's hot out. Charlie's bar was on a real crummy street with a lot of other bars whose bartenders kicked us out when we strolled in. There was a movie house, a drugstore, a secondhand clothes store that always had a sign in the window saying, "We buy almost anything." And from the looks of their clothes, they did. We nowadays have a secondhand clothes store called Goodwill. There
I
you go.
love Goodwill.
Me too. When my old lady went into the hospital, we got so low on money that I bought clothes there. I mean, it's pretty lousy having to buy used clothes. We found Eminem in the drugstore reading Newsweek. It shows what a weird kid he was, since there were plenty of skin mags and things to read. A little kid like him shouldn't be reading that kind of magazine, I know, but he should at least want to. So as we get into this Eminem kid, he's 13 and he sort of hangs out with them on occasion. This is what he reads for fun. Newsweek, which are like the boring adult magazines, and that's what this 13-year-old reads for a good time. They're also going to talk about his books. There are these things that used to be called like war orphan commercials, where you see like these things. Now you guys don't even watch commercials, but they used to have like these things where you could like donate money to try and help kids in other countries.
Seeing those.
And usually they would have kids with like big eyes blinking at the camera. And it's like, you don't want this child to die, dude. And so that's what Eminem looks like. He has like these big brown eyes like looking out at you.
Like me.
No,
That's
like
so
Rocky.
weird.
Works for me. And then they're going to talk about the fact that he wears an army jacket, which is like what you would wear if you were in the army as you were going around. But he also wears a giant peace symbol around his neck because he's a hippie. And when they talk about his feet, they say he wears moccasins, which are like that. If you've seen
That looks like shoes.
signs in windows that say no shirt, no shoes, no service, that all started because of hippies. Because hippies would go around without shoes on, and
That's
people
so
wanted to
gross.
keep hippies out of their stores. It had nothing to do with sanitary. They tried because whether you're wearing shoes or whether you're wearing thin little flip-flops, it doesn't matter. It was all about trying to keep hippies out of your store. So that's why they said no shirt,
That's
no
so
shoes, no
gross,
service.
though.
It's all about discrimination. All right, came from there. Let's go back. There we go. Hey, Charlie said you was looking for us. Mark greeted him. Eminem looked up at him. Yeah, how you guys doing? Eminem was the most serious guy I knew. He always had this wide-eyed, intent, trusting look on his face, but sometimes he smiled, and when he did, it was really great. He was an awful nice kid, even if he was a little strange. He had big gray eyes, like the kinds you see on war orphan posters, charcoal-colored hair down past his ears and down to his eyebrows. He probably would have grown a beard, except 13 was too young for it. He always wore an old army jacket that was too big for him and went barefoot even after it started getting cold. Then his father got fed up with it and Eminem got a pair of moccasins. He had a metal peace symbol hanging around his neck on a piece of rawhide string. He got his nickname from his addiction to M&Ms, the kind of chocolate candy that melts in your mouth,
I love M&Ms.
not in your hand. For years, I'd never seen Eminem without a bag of that candy. I don't know how he ate those things all day long, day after day. If I did that, my face would break out like nothing you've ever seen. You want an M&M? He held out a bag toward us. I shook my head, but Mark took one, just to be polite, since he didn't like sweet stuff. You wanted to see us for something? Yeah, I did, but I forgot what for. He was like that, real absent-minded. My sister's home, he added as an afterthought. No kidding, asked Mark, tactfully thumbing through a bad magazine. Which one? Eminem had 1,000,000 brothers and sisters, most of them younger. They all looked alike, and it was really funny to see him out somewhere with 4 or 5 little carbon copies. Long dark hairs, with dark hair and big serious eyes hanging all over him. If I had to be a babysitter day and night, I'd lose my temper and kill one of those brats. But then, Eminem never lost his temper. My older sister, Kathy, you know. Yeah, I remember, I said, only I didn't remember too well. Where's she been? She went to a private school last year in the summer. She's been staying with my aunt. She had to come home, though, because she ran out of money. She paid for it all with her own bread. Must be smart. I couldn't remember what she looked like. I'd never paid any attention to her. She as smart as you? No, Eminem said, still No, Eminem said, still reading. He wasn't bragging. He was telling the truth. He was just a very honest kid. Hey, let's go over to the bowling alley, Mark suggested. The drugstore wasn't exactly jumping with action. It was a school night and nobody was hanging around. Hey, you come too, Eminem. It was a long walk to the bowling alley, and I wished for the 100th time I had a car. I had to walk everywhere I went. As if he'd read my mind, which he was in the habit of doing, Mark said, hey, I could hotwire us a car. That's a bad thing to do, taking something that doesn't belong to you. It ain't stealing, it's, borrowing. Yeah, well, you're on probation now for borrowing, so I don't think it's such a great idea. Mark could hotwire anything, and ever since he was 12 years old, he had hot-wired cars and driven them. He'd never had an accident, but he finally got caught at it, so now, once a week, he had to go downtown on his school lunch hour to see his probation officer and tell him how he was never going to steal cars anymore. I'd been worried at first, afraid they were going to take Mark and put him in a boys' home, since he wasn't really my brother and didn't have a family. I was worried about Mark being locked up. I mean, I didn't need to. Mark always came through everything untouched, unworried, and unaffected. Two things with that. Do you guys know what hot wiring is?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like jumps
like you can start.
So why would you need to hot wire a car?
So
you don't need keys.
Yeah, so it's whenever you don't have a key and you're wanting to start it. Typically it's when you're trying to steal one. My dad was an auto mechanic, and so he actually had a car that didn't have a key and you had to hot wire it to start it. It was an old beat up car. But I always thought it was funny because no one could really steal it unless you knew how to hot wire a car. That was the only way to drive it. Mark, the friend slash brother, got arrested for hot wiring cars, and I'll give more into that as we come up. But he's on probation. You know what probation is?
Yes.
So probation is when you've been arrested and gotten in trouble with the police, and usually it's usually if you're younger or if it's not a really serious crime, instead of going to jail, you do it's not quite community service, but it's more where you have to meet with a police officer once a month and check in. And it's basically just almost like therapy, but they just check in, make sure you're making good choices, see what's going on with you and stuff like that. I will talk about probation when I get into my stories next week with my poor choices, and I'll talk about me and probation and how those things affect. And so here, Mark's also on probation where he has to go in and check in with a police officer every week or so. Okay, Mark shrugged. Don't get shook, Brian. Brian, Eminem said suddenly. Were you named after the Lord? What? I said, stunned. For a minute, I thought he meant God. Lord Brian, were you named after him? The poor kid had Byron, which is this guy who was a poet from a long time ago, and Brian. So his name was B-Y-R-O-N, and the friend's name is B-R-Y-O-N. Mixed up. I decided to string him along. Yeah, I was. Is there a Lord Brian? Mark said. That's cool. I mean, I guess it's cool. What'd this guy do anyway? Oh, I can't tell you in front of the kid. Eminem shook his head. He wrote poetry. He wrote long old poems. You ought to write poetry just to keep up the tradition of the Bryans. And you ought to keep your mouth shut before I keep up the tradition of punching wise guys in the mouth. Eminem looked up at me, and I realized from his hurt, puzzled look he wasn't trying to be smart, meaning he wasn't trying to be sassy. So I punched him on the shoulder and said, okay, I'll write poetry. How's this? And I recited a dirty limerick I'd heard somewhere. A limerick is a 5-line poem, and typically they were the early versions of dirty jokes that poets used to do. I did not give you dirty jokes up here. If you want to be educated, there's this thing called the internet. And then you can go spend time on there and find all kinds of frightening rhymes. But I am not going to be the one to educate you. How's this? I recited, made him laugh and turn red at the same time. Mark thought I just made it up and said, hey, that was pretty good. Can you just pop them off like that? I only shrugged and said, sometimes, because then I could take credit whether or not it was really due to me. I was like that. I'd also lie if I really thought I could get away with it, especially to girls, like telling them I loved them and junk when I didn't. I had a rep as a lady killer, a hustler. Nowadays we'd call him a player. That's what I was thinking too. Yeah, he's definitely a player, and he will continue along that way for a while. I kept up the old Lord Byron tradition in one way. Sometimes I'd get to feeling bad, thinking about how rotten I treated some of these chicks. But most of the time, it didn't even bother me. Again, not a really good person. Eminem, old buddy, Mark was saying, putting his arm across Eminem's shoulders. I was wondering if you might be able to loan your best friend some money. You ain't my best friend, Eminem said with that disarming honesty. But how much do you want? $3? I got 50 cents. Eminem reached into his jeans pocket, pulled out a couple of quarters. Here. Forget it, I said. Me and Mark looked at each other and shook our heads. Eminem was unbelievable. No, it's okay. I'll get 50 cents again next week for babysitting. Is that all you get paid for watching all those kids? 50 cents? I couldn't get over it. 50 cents a week? I think it's enough. I don't mind taking care of the kids. I mean, who's going to do it if I don't? Both my parents work, so they can't do it. Anyway, I like my family. When I get married, I'm going to have at least 9 or 10 kids. Whew, there goes the population explosion, Mark said. Well, now that your sister's home, she can do a lot of the babysitting, I said, trying to be helpful. Eminem could tell we thought he was crazy. And there was talk.
Oh, never mind, I can do it.
I don't want to go to second period.
You're broke.
Sorry.
Second period.